Long ago, I did a review of Metroid Other M, here's a link to it if you fancy giving it a watch, and while I liked the game, it still pales in comparison to any of the games from the Metroid Prime Trilogy. Granted, they have their issues as well, just like every other game, but on the whole, they're three incredibly well designed games, and I love them. I bought the Trilogy collection for the Wii soon after it was released, and it's one of my favourite sets of games for many reasons, but that's not why we're here today. The games do many things rather well, and one thing that usually gets discussed with these types of games are the bosses. There are some brilliant tense boss fights during the games to put your skills to the test, but there are also those bosses that are an absolute snooze fest or are just plain cheap, so it's both those types of boss I'll be scrutinising. I've done a lot of top 5 loved and hated lists before, so I'll be following the usual format of 5th most loved, 5th most hated, 4th most loved, 4th most hated, and so on, plus a few honourable and dishonourable mentions. The only real rule I have is that in order to count as a boss, they have to have a health bar displayed when being battled, so as fun and tense as bosses like the security system in Echoes are, no health bar, no eligibility. Bosses fought multiple times will have each fight counted separately and will only be eligible to be in each top 5 list once. There are still a lot of bosses eligible to be in the list, so as I always say, just remember this is purely my opinion. If you have a different opinion, then let me know what your loved and hated bosses are. All of this is going to have the game set to hyper mode, which is the hardest difficulty, so bear that in mind with some of the comments I make about these bosses. And with that, here we go. At the start of Corruption, we are introduced to some new faces, and one of the badasses I liked right at the start was Rundus. People with ice abilities are usually pretty awesome, I'm always Iceman in X-Men Legends, and the battle against Rundus on Brio lives up to expectation. He does some of the usual tropes of sliding on ice paths he creates, hurling massive ice blocks at you, and a slew of other things, but the battle never gets dull. There are several bosses before this guy in Corruption, but Rundus will probably be the first one that will leave a lasting impression. He may not be especially difficult, particularly when you know the best way to defeat him. After I died against him, I restarted and got his health down to about 25% with hardly any trouble, but I was still having a great time. Plus, he has one of the best death scenes in the trilogy. Most bosses are a bit of a challenge, maybe even annoyingly so. Others are so easy they turn into being an inconvenient waste of time, and such is the case with the Powerbomb Guardian. All you have to do is use the spider ball to roll along tracks, avoid any little creatures and the power bombs the Guardian throws at you to activate 4 bomb slots. The number of bomb slots you need to activate and the hazards along the way don't change depending on the difficulty, so he's easy even on hyper mode. At the start of the spider ball track you can go clockwise or anti-clockwise round the room to get to the bomb slots, but the only part of the track that could be a challenge is between slots 2 and 3 going clockwise, so you can just go anti-clockwise to slots 4 and then 3, which allows you to completely miss out the only part of the battle that could have provided a small amount of challenge. It's easy, dull and pointless, but at least it's over quick, and once all 4 bomb slots are activated, it's quite morbidly satisfying watching the Guardian get squished. Sometimes different is good, and such is the case with the Spider Ball Guardian.
What? Okay.
Justin? What are you doing here?
You chose Spider Ball Guardian as your most loved? What?
Alright, I know it's a bit of an unusual choice, but hear me out before you tell me I'm wrong.
Alright, whatever you say, man. Give it your best shot.
With most bosses in the games, it's a case of figuring out their weak point, exposing it, and then shooting it until they fall over, but the Spider Ball Guardian from Echoes does things differently. It's more of a puzzle than just shooting stuff. It uses the Spider Ball to roll along the wall, and you've got to guide it into electric coils. Morphball bombs lower its shield, but the only way to kill it is to figure out how you need to manipulate the environment in order to guide it to where it needs to be. There are 3 areas it travels through, and each one gets progressively harder and require you to do more in the small window of opportunity while the shield is weakened. It has its annoying aspects, like when jumping up to a platform doesn't work properly, and just like with the Powerbomb Guardian, there's very little difference in the battle between each difficulty, but it's a challenging and different pace to all the other bosses in the game.
Oh, alright. Alright, I mean, I obviously disagree with you, but you make good points. What's your next one?
Ridley is one of the most iconic bosses in the series, and you fight him several times between Prime and Corruption, with 3 occasions meeting the eligibility criteria: Meta Ridley in Prime and the Generator C Shaft battle, and Omega Ridley in Corruption, but only one of these battles I really don't like: Meta Ridley.
So wait, Meta Ridley is now on your hated list? So, what, is this like, is this a serious video? Is this a joke? What?
Are you going to be doing this every time now?
Whatever you say, man. I mean, this is your list, but I mean, Meta Ridley's pretty cool.
Okay, I was expecting to get some stick for this one as well, so once again, hear me out. You see Ridley at the start of the game and a few times around the place, but it's only near the end of the game you get to show him who's boss. Thing is, during the first part of the match you'll spend most of your time stood there doing nothing because he's off flying around and you've got to wait for him to come back before you can do anything. When he is around, you can shoot him and it's great. Bit of dodging, weaving, blasting, great stuff, but it doesn't last long before he's off again and you're stood there like a lemon waiting for him to come back. Eventually his wings burn off and he comes in for the kill. This is the better part of the battle, but seeing as there are times he just uses the same damn move over and over again, it gets really annoying really quickly. Certain moves can be countered with good timing, others dodge, and that's great, that's how a battle should be. But when they just keep doing the same thing repeatedly so you can't counter or get out of the way so you die, it becomes plain cheap. The battle has its good moments, but they are too outweighed by the bad. Happy with that?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, you don't sound convinced. You know what? I don't care. My list, my video, my choice. And besides, if you're going to keep bugging me, how about we start talking about your Corruption Let's Play you started ages ago, haven't touched for 3 years, and aren't even halfway through yet?
Yeah, good night, everybody.
I know I just hated on Meta Ridley, a battle which always seems to top Metroid boss videos, but I much prefer the 2 Ridley battles in Corruption. The Generator C Shaft battle is good, but I love Omega Ridley. It requires several skills to be implemented to defeat him, and he's got some awesome moves. The battle generally is similar to Meta Ridley's, but Omega Ridley is so much more fun and a lot less monotonous. You need to use a lot of your learned tricks and abilities to counter or dodge his attacks, so you need to pay close attention to his actions. He has some core moves, some being very reminiscent of moves Meta Ridley had, and he's a challenging boss even if you've managed to collect most of the health expansions in your travels. He does do that annoying flying around bit, which leaves you standing around like a lemon, but luckily it's only for the last small part of the battle, so he'll only do it 2 or 3 times before you manage to end him for good. There are several bosses in the Prime Trilogy that drag on a little too much as you gradually chip away at their health, but none of them seem to drag on as much as the Grapple Guardian. How you fight him is fair enough. Shoot him in the eyes so it pisses him off, he shoots the grapple beam at you, and then you can get behind him to shoot him up the jacksie. Fine, but not only does each one take ages, but you have to do it a lot of times. Chances of dying are minimal as there are 2 places that have light in them, so you can regenerate your health as much as you want. In the final stages of the fight, the Guardian's shell breaks, so it uses the grapple energy to create a shield, which is lowered by shooting it in the eyes and pissing it off. It won't try and grapple you anymore, but it has slowed down, which allows you to get behind it to shoot it up the jacksie. This guy is here because he takes so long to defeat, he gets really boring. It's a fair enough idea for a boss battle, but it's so mercilessly drawn out you can feel your IQ lowering as you're fighting it. I don't know why, but I never really liked the Torvus Bog section of Echoes, and I'm still not that keen on it, but there's one boss that instantly became my favourite boss so far. Chicka. I think that's how it's pronounced anyway. It starts off in its lava form, and that's a decent battle. Think Georg from Majora's Mask, only much more fun, and it isn't especially difficult, so it's not long before it's had enough and you win the day. But then, it comes back as the Chicka adult, and this is where the fun times start. All you have to do is shoot its lava sack to stun it, use the grapple beam to swing behind it and destroy its wings. Sounds fairly straightforward, but the little bugger doesn't make it easy for you, but without taking the Michael, so you get frustrated and want to give up. It's stunned long enough so that even if you mess up a tad, you should still have time to get in a hit or two, which stops the boss from dragging on. Shooting it, swinging around like Spider-Man and gradually destroying the wings all add up to one fun boss. I don't know if it's bugs with the game or what, but the alpha blog royally pisses me off. You can probably guess the weak point is his mouth, but you have to wait for him to open it, exposing the soft inside in order to do any damage, and as you can probably guess, he only opens it when he's attacking, and so many times I find it's a choice of either shooting him or getting out of the way. You can try and do both, but you'll probably end up missing. If the distance between you is larger, then you stand a better chance of getting the hit, but it's not always a guarantee, as I find a lot of shots are right on target, but for some reason don't count. Then when he traps you in a corner and rushes at you over and over again, giving you no chance to get out of the way, so you lose a load of your health in 5 seconds, it really doesn't help keeping calm. Sooner or later he'll die, causing me to shout, "Yes, stuff you, you swine," or some variation thereof, but I recently found out you can use something called the ghetto jump to escape the room during the fight, which I really wish I knew about earlier, partly so I could show it in action, but mainly so I could avoid this bastard. Before announcing my most loved boss, here are some honourable mentions. You probably knew Dark Samus would be in here somewhere, as she's fought multiple times across the trilogy, more than any other boss. Some of the encounters are rather climactic, others rather annoying, but as I mentioned in the intro, I can only have one occasion in the loved list, which is fine, because I absolutely loved the final encounter at the end of Corruption. So much so that when I died against the Aurora unit you fight after Dark Samus, I really didn't mind having to refight Dark Samus again multiple times because the battle was so enjoyable. She does have her annoying moments, as some moves seem to be almost impossible to completely get out of the way of, but despite that, she has a huge array of other moves up her arm cannon to mess with you, and she ends up being one hell of an intense battle. It doesn't rely on any sort of gimmick or specific ability to destroy her, you just got to know what you can do to put your abilities to the best use to avoid her attacks as much as possible, and hope she dies before you do. The atmosphere constantly draining your health can be a bit of a pain, but as it drains your health quite slowly, you can get enough recovery globs to see you through to the bitter end if you know where to look, and it only adds to the tension. It's an absolutely epic battle and a great way to finish off such an iconic nemesis. Before tearing my most hated boss a new one, here's some dishonourable mentions. Originally, this list was going to be a top 10 bosses from the Prime Trilogy and then went to a top 5, but it was due to one boss that made me decide to make this a 5 loved and hated bosses, all because of how much I hate Modena. I love corruption, but the thought of having to face this bastard again actually puts me off playing it. He's far too complicated for his own good. It sounds fair enough on paper. Shoot the big red balls, destroy them, and then destroy the phazon stored underneath. I have many problems with this guy. First, the balls take a lot of shots to destroy, so you'll end up with finger cramp before you've destroyed the first one. Second, if you do manage to destroy one of the balls, he is able to regenerate them by pulling them from the sides of the arena. You can destroy the hands pulling them in, but with how long they take to be destroyed, you need to be almost perfect in your timing and aiming to destroy both of them, and if you don't, you've got to destroy the ball again to get to the phazon. Third, when you do destroy a ball, you have to use hyper mode to destroy the phazon core, which is an absolute arse. Modena is the end boss for the first major area, so you don't have much health at this point in the game, and seeing as using hyper mode uses your health, it becomes really annoying when you're too low on health to use hyper mode, which means you can't beat him until he randomly uses one of the moves that actually provides health, and even then, it doesn't always give you the health. There are other things, but they would be the main issues, which would be fine on their own, but having all three together, plus other little things, makes the boss more infuriating than anything else. It always takes me many attempts to defeat him, and I fail purely because of his cheap design, to the point having to try so many times gets really dull, and the thought of having to start from scratch every single time you lose makes it very tempting to give up rather than have to go through it all over again. When you do finally defeat him, it doesn't bring that cheer of success and sense of accomplishment because you're so fed up with facing him you've lost interest. I'm just glad there's so much great stuff in the rest of Corruption to make up for the murderous rampage inducing boss that is Modena. And they're my choices. Let me know what you thought, as well as your own loved and hated bosses, but remember to play nice. So for now, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.